I am going to be reading from my novel Bone Worship, and this is from a chapter called Groom Soup. Since our theme is heat, and I figured probably most people might be reading about sex, I thought I would do cooking instead. So, okay. Everything my father cooks eventually becomes a soup. This is a testament to his ability to break things down to their most basic, liquefied level. He cooks soups that are not soups, too thick, spicy, and meaty to fill a soup can. His soups are always the color of exotic flowers, red-orange, or yellow-red, or yellow-green-red. He stands in the kitchen, scraping the bad parts of some chives into the trash can, and it's clear the kitchen, though modern and spacious, is too small for him. Too small for his stirring and scraping, chopping and chewing, too small for the fast way he swings his hips around to the stove before the water boils over. My mother stands behind my father in the doorway, watching. Like me, she cannot bear to interrupt. "What do you think, Margaret?" he suddenly asks, knowing the whole time that we're watching him, marveling. "It looks good," my mother says, brushing back her hair so she can get a better view, but she watches his chopping like he's performing an autopsy. The little light bulb over the stove illuminates their faces. My father returns to the sink and turns on the water full force. He thinks about the chives he's grown in his herb garden behind the house. I believe he's proud not to have bought them. "I think you're a wizard," I want to say. "I think you have missed your calling. You only seem happy when you cook." "We make the best soup with chicken necks and heads," he tells my mother. She moves closer to him, but maintains some distance. The way they stand side by side, but with enough space between them to fit a whole person, you would not know they were married. My father's in his maroon pajamas, which he always wears when he cooks. My mother is still wearing her mint green pantsuit from work. Every now and then she looks down at herself, worried that his cooking will have stained her clothes. There's a raw chicken breast at the bottom of the sink, the water pouring over it. I fear salmonella, E. coli, bacteria, but being sanitary is not my father's concern, not in the kitchen. My mother makes a face when my father touches the stove with contaminated hands. "Is that wise?" she asks. He clears his throat. I say, "What wise?" The soups are always perfect for a few minutes and then destroyed by a small element. Usually it's a handful of beans, lima or otherwise, chickpeas, black-eyed peas, too much turmeric, parsley. Once or twice it was A1 sauce. He has never said it, but I believe in these moments my father feels he's exercising creative freedom, a bit of artistic flair, that he is close to being a chef, or at least behaving like one. My mother and I will say we have eaten, even though we haven't. He'll shrug and eat our portions. Nothing will go to waste. Later that night, after he's asleep, we'll sneak out into the kitchen and scrounge for our own food. Of course, there are nights when we feel charitable, when we'll force ourselves to eat his soup, but this is not one of those nights. On those nights, my mother looks strangely sad, swallowing thick inedibles down her slender throat. The chicken's done. "Here you do not understand a chicken," he says, stirring, clanging the spoon against the sides of the pot. "In Iran, the best part of the chicken is the neck. The meat just falls away from the bone. You suck it like this, see?" My mother has to leave the room. I don't blame her. "Jasmine, taste this," he commands, thrusting the spoon at me. As I chew the tomatoes, I find myself making a face. I can't help it. He asks me questions while my mouth is full. Do you like it? It is good, isn't it? And other fragments of interrogatory broken grammar. I chew the words up in the mouthful of soup. I could do anything. I could swallow. I could look him in the eye. I could say something, but I don't. Pay attention, he demands. Why, to the soup? Yes, to the soup. Is your wedding soup. You and Omar. He angrily goes back to stirring. I wasn't aware there was a wedding soup. I wasn't aware there was a husband. What else am I not aware of? After the wedding, will Omar and I crush grapes with our feet and make wine for the guests? Will we put our firstborn into an Iranian oven and bake him into a nice fat loaf of bread? My father has not filled me in on the details. He's keeping me in the dark. As long as I show up on the wedding day, the rest will be taken care of. I look over my father's shoulder into the bubbling mixture of tomato sauce and chicken. What if I like the soup, but Omar doesn't? I ask. You will both like it, he says. When he first came to the United States, my father couldn't eat anything here. Everything made him sick, went through him, left him thinner. He didn't drink milk and still doesn't. His first year in the country, he survived on steak and eggs. I don't know if he had eaten steak and eggs in Iran and luckily happened upon them on an easy-to-understand menu somewhere, or if he ate steak and eggs as an experiment in the hospital cafeteria and the meal didn't leave him so empty so fast. I just know that he ate steak and eggs like it was part of his religion. Eventually, my father discovered that there were other places where one could obtain flour and salt and other Iranian ingredients. And because he had been the one dark-eyed boy in the kitchen watching his mother make bread, he knew how to replicate the act. But before that, before he invented the way to cook rice in America, before his unwritten recipes and soups, there were some mistakes. He tried alcohol once, cold duck, and found that it played with his cellular composition, with the ratio of gastric juices in his gut. He found himself on a beach somewhere, making snow angels in the sand, with dinner running down the front of his shirt. He ate cheesecake and learned that the consumption of cheese is unwise. He began to hate the word dairy. He became familiar with specific public bathrooms. My father then moved into a long and difficult time, a time of emaciation and rare consumption of meat and protein, then into a time of bread and soft, buttery potatoes and little white mountains of rice. He started cooking all of a sudden, one day, on a day when he realized he could and must. Over the years, my father refined his recipes. Sometimes he just peels pears. For him, there is something comforting in the idea that there is one right way to do it, and he is in possession of it. Later, when he got married and had someone to cook for him, someone whose southern fried foods he couldn't really eat, he'd sneak into the kitchen late at night to stuff an egg whole into his mouth.